In this video, we'll be looking at stem-changing verbs, also known as boot verbs. I'll give you a few of them at first, and then I'll go through and explain why they are called boot verbs or what stem-changing verbs mean. And we'll do a little bit of practice with them, and then hopefully you'll get it. So some common stem-changing verbs that go from E to IE, and again I'll explain this in a second, are cerrar, cerrar, empezar, empezar, entender, entender, merendar, merendar, perder, perder, preferir, preferir, querer, querer, pensar, pensar. And these are all stem-changing verbs or boot verbs in the present tense. I'm going to put one up on the board for you and tell you why it's called stem-changing verb or boot verb, and then give you a chance to practice. Okay, so up on the board here behind me, I have conjugated the verb pensar for you in the present tense. Pensar means to think or to plan. You'll start noticing more often now when you're looking at verbs or you have verbs in your vocabulary page, you'll see something like this where it says E/ie. That means that it's going to be a boot verb in the present tense. And what you have to do is change the E in the verb to an IE in certain places. Those places happen to be the yo, tú, él, ella, usted, ellos, ellas, ustedes forms of the verb. And then if I were to circle those, it can kind of look like a boot, hence the term boot verb. So boot verb or stem changing verb. Stem changing means you change the stem, because if the stem of this verb right here, pensar, if I take off the AR, the stem is PENS. That's the stem, and I'm changing the stem to PIENS in these four places. So now you have pienso, piensas, piensa, pensamos, pensáis, piensan. So the nosotros and the vosotros forms, they do not fall inside the boot. They're outside of the boot, so you do not change the E to IE. So just to give yourself quick practice, why don't you take the verb perder, perder, which means to lose, and conjugate it in the present tense, and then I'll have the answers for you. So pause the video and see if you can do the verb perder in the present tense. So now that you've conjugated perder, it should be as follows. Yo pierdo, tú pierdes, él, ella, usted pierde, pierde, nosotros perdemos, perdemos, vosotros perdéis, perdéis, ellos, ellas, ustedes pierden, pierden. So I'm going to have you do one more verb for me, and how about you do the verb merendar, merendar. But before you do it, if you're wondering, well, there's two E's in the verb merendar. The E that you're going to change will always be the last E, unless it's an ER verb. So, for example, in the verb entender, there's three E's. Entender, three E's. It's not going to be the E on the ER at the end, because that ER you're going to take off before you add your new ending. So on entender, it'll be the E in the middle. So on merendar, there's two E's. It'll be the E closest to the end, which happens to be the second E. So on merendar, go ahead and conjugate that in the present tense, and I will give you your answer. So pause it, conjugate it, see if you have it right. All right, now that you have your answer written down, merendar conjugates as follows. Meriendo, meriendo, meriendas, meriendas, merienda, merienda, merendamos, merendamos, merendáis, merendáis, meriendan, meriendan. Hopefully this is seeming somewhat familiar to you, because you've actually already learned a boot verb recently, and that verb was jugar, jugar meaning to play. When you conjugated jugar, you changed the U to UE, so that was a different boot verb, meaning the U changed to UE rather than an E changing to IE, but it's the same concept. It changes in the yo, tú, él, usted, ellos, ellas, ustedes places. So jugar is also a boot verb. You've also learned another boot verb before in the past. It's a little bit irregular, but it is a boot verb. The verb tener, if you remember, the E in tener changes to IE as well. Except for the yo form is irregular, goes to tengo, but the rest of them, like tú tienes, ella tiene, ellos tienen, it was also kind of like a boot verb. It's just a little bit irregular. All right, I'm going to give you 4 questions right now. I'm going to be using the verbs pensar, preferir, merendar, querer. Before I ask you the question with pensar, which means to think or to plan, I'm going to tell you that it means to plan when there is an infinitive after it, a verb like correr, comer. So if I wanted to say, I plan to eat, I would say pienso comer. So if there's an infinitive after pensar, then it means to plan. So pregunta 1. ¿Qué piensas hacer en la clase de español? ¿Qué piensas hacer en la clase de español? Yo pienso hablar. Yo pienso hablar. Pregunta 2. ¿Qué prefieres mirar en la televisión? ¿Qué prefieres mirar en la televisión? Yo prefiero mirar los deportes. Yo prefiero mirar los deportes. Pregunta 2. ¿Cuándo meriendas? ¿Cuándo meriendas? Yo meriendo a las 10 de la mañana. Yo meriendo a las 10 de la mañana. Pregunta 4. ¿Qué quieres jugar en la clase de educación física? ¿Qué quieres jugar en la clase de educación física? Yo quiero jugar al baloncesto. Yo quiero jugar al baloncesto. If you need more help or want me to give you some additional practice, let me know and I'll post a new video if you need me to.